All right, let's just dive right in. Today, we're taking a completely objective, top-to-bottom look at a philosophical framework that basically flipped modern self-help culture on its head. We're breaking down Rick Warren's massive bestseller, What on Earth Am I Here For? Now, whether you consider yourself deeply religious, strictly secular, or honestly anywhere in between, understanding this text is absolutely crucial. It represents one of the most widely read, perspective-shifting arguments in modern publishing. So we're going to explore exactly how this explainer attempts to totally re-engineer the way people view their own existence. And it all starts with one of those big, universal human dilemmas. You know the one. It's beautifully captured in this single, profound question. What on earth am I here for? I mean, at some point in our lives, every single one of us hits a wall and wonders about our purpose, right? Are we just wandering around aimlessly? Or is there a specific, concrete reason we're taking up space on this planet? Establishing those existential stakes right out of the gate is exactly how Warren hooks his readers. He recognizes that without a real sense of purpose, life can just feel like motion without any actual meaning. Which brings us directly to our source text. What on Earth Am I Here For is actually a booklet pulled straight from Warren's seminal work, The Purpose-Driven Life. To give you a bit of context, that is literally one of the best-selling nonfiction books in human history. To create a clear explainer for you today, we're going to dissect the core architecture of Warren's argument. We'll look at how he diagnoses the human condition, the alternatives he presents, and finally, the ultimate cosmic audit he claims is waiting for all of us. So let's jump right into section 1, the search for meaning and why we might have the wrong starting point. Now, according to Warren, the reason this whole search for purpose has puzzled humanity for thousands of years is actually pretty simple. He says we've just been starting in the completely wrong place. Think about it. If you stroll into a bookstore today, the self-help section is basically screaming at you to look inward. It tells you to figure out your dreams, clarify your values, and set those high goals. But Warren, he argues that this is actually a philosophical dead end. He notes that while self-help might make you wildly successful by the world's standards, being successful and fulfilling your life's actual purpose are two entirely different things. To find purpose, he argues, you have to look upward, not inward. He actually shares this really great little anecdote in the text to back this up. He talks about a time he got lost in the mountains, stopped to ask for directions to a campsite, and the person just looks at him and says, "You can't get there from here. You must start from the other side of the mountain." Warren uses this as a sort of metaphor for the whole human experience. You literally cannot arrive at your life's true purpose if you start by just focusing on yourself. His logic is, if you didn't create yourself, you can't possibly tell yourself what you were created for. Moving right along to section 2, the creator's framework, consulting the maker. So if we can't find the answers by just looking inside ourselves, where exactly are we supposed to look? Well, Warren offers a super practical analogy here. Imagine I hand you this incredibly complex, bizarre invention you've never laid eyes on before. You would know its purpose just by staring at it, and it's not like the invention is going to speak up and tell you. To figure it out, you either have to ask the person who created it or, read the owner's manual. Warren posits that the exact same logic applies to human beings. Instead of relying on human speculation or playing philosophical guessing games, he argues we absolutely must consult our Creator's owner's manual, which he identifies as the Bible, to reveal the specific specs and purposes of our design. To really drive home the stakes of the alternative, Warren brings up this story about the Russian novelist Andrei Bitov. Bitov actually grew up under a regime that totally denied the existence of a creator. But one dreary day, just riding the metro in Leningrad, he was suddenly hit with this crushing wave of existential despair. Out of nowhere, this phrase just popped into his head. Without God, life makes no sense. Bitov was so stunned, he literally just repeated it, walked out of the metro, and kind of stepped out of the dark, so to speak. Warren uses this to underscore that without a creator, everything is just astronomical random chance, and therefore ultimately devoid of any true meaning. Which leads us to section 3, what drives your life? Looking at those unconscious forces. Because think about it, if we aren't being driven by some sort of divine purpose, what exactly is steering the ship? Warren gives us this fascinating, kind of brutal diagnostic breakdown of 5 really common yet completely chaotic drivers. First up is guilt, people basically just running from past regrets and unconsciously sabotaging their own success. Second is resentment, holding on to old hurts. Warren actually likens this to drinking poison and just hoping the other person dies. Pretty vivid, right? Then there's fear, playing it way too safe and missing out on life. Fourth is materialism, that whole myth that just buying more stuff is going to bring you ultimate security. And finally, the need for approval, letting the totally unpleasable expectations of your parents, peers, or society dictate your entire path. All of these, he argues, just lead straight to a dead end. So here's the crucial pivot. How does Warren's framework actually counter all those negative drivers? Well, he argues that knowing your purpose inherently focuses your life. It acts as a cure for what he calls aimless distraction. You know that feeling, right? That modern condition where we're all spinning around frantically like a gyroscope, but we aren't actually going anywhere. He says that by knowing what you are here for, you become effective by being selective. You basically stop playing Trivial Pursuit with your life and focus your energy only on what truly matters, according to your specific design. All right, section 4, the eternal perspective. Zooming out to a cosmic timescale. To really grasp what matters in this framework, we have to dramatically zoom out, like way out. Warren basically redefines the very ground we walk on. He argues that this life, it's not all there is. In fact, compared to eternity, your time here on Earth is just a tiny parenthesis. He describes Earth as a staging area, a warm-up lap, a dress rehearsal. He even calls it a temporary preschool. The core thesis here is that you were made to last forever, and this incredibly brief earthly existence is strictly a preparation phase for a much, much longer eternal production. And when you adopt that kind of massive cosmic perspective, well, your values inevitably have to change. If Earth is all there is, Warren freely admits it would totally make sense to just live it up. Chase the fame, chase the wealth, get as popular as you possibly can. But because he argues that death is just a transition and not a termination, those earthly values become incredibly short-sighted. Instead, the entire focus shifts over to eternal values, investing in relationships, building up your character, and spiritual growth. The fleeting trends and fashions of the day, they suddenly just don't matter anymore. To really illustrate how fast these earthly legacies fade, Warren shares this super striking story about a college student. So this guy's absolute ultimate life goal was to become his school's tennis champion. And hey, he succeeded. He was intensely proud when his big, shiny trophy got placed right there in the campus trophy cabinet. But years later, somebody actually mailed that exact same trophy back to him. Why? Because they found it tossed in a trash can during a school remodel. Yeah. Warren uses this to highlight a pretty sobering truth. Given enough time, all of your earthly trophies are gonna get trashed by someone else. Living for an earthly legacy is a losing game. Which brings us to our final section. Section 5, the final 2 questions, the ultimate audit. So if the earthly trophies all end up in the dumpster, what exactly is the final exam? Well, according to this framework, right before you enter eternity, God is going to ask you 2 very specific, crucial questions. And spoiler alert, he says God won't be asking about your religious background or your doctrinal views. Step 1, the very first question is simply this: what did you do with my son, Jesus Christ? Basically, did you accept him and learn to love and trust him? Step 2, the second question, is essentially an audit of your resources. What did you do with your life? Did you spend your gifts, your talents, and your energy all on yourself? Or did you use them for the actual purposes you were created for? Now, there is a massive, high-stakes distinction between these 2 questions that we really need to clarify here. Question 1, your relationship to Jesus Christ, is what Warren states will determine where you spend eternity. It decides whether you are with God or separated from him. But question 2, how you actually used your earthly talents and your life, that determines what you do in eternity. It dictates your specific responsibilities and rewards in that eternal stage. Literally everything in Warren's book is designed to prepare the reader to confidently answer these 2 specific questions. And honestly, that just brings us right back full circle. Warren's framework challenges us to strip away all of the distractions, the self-help myths, those fleeting earthly trophies, and it asks us to confront the reality of our own design. So, regardless of where you might currently stand on matters of faith or philosophy, this explainer leaves us holding up a deeply provocative mirror. Think about it. If you aren't being guided by some deliberate, larger purpose, what exactly is the driving force in your life right now?